Hello, my YouTube family and friends. I pray that everyone is having a beautiful, blessed Wednesday in the mighty name of Jesus. And if you have not said it already, let's say it together. Thank you, Jesus, for another day. It is indeed a blessing to be alive, y'all. So I wanted to hop on here and just share something that's been in my spirit. It's been on my heart. It's been on my heart for a while, but I wanted to share it here on this platform as well. But I want to first read Psalm. It's the 71st chapter, and I'm going to read the first verse through the fourth. Or actually, the first verse through the 6th verse. So it reads, in you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Rescue me and deliver me in your righteousness. Turn your ear to me and save me. Be my rock of refuge to which I can always go. Give the command to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. Deliver me, O my God, from the hand of the wicked, from the grasp of evil and cruel men. For you have been my hope, O sovereign Lord, my confidence since my youth. From birth I have relied on you. You brought me forth from my mother's womb. I will ever praise you. So I read Psalm 71 verses 1 through 6. So, and I'm reading out of the Bible that I have is it's the NIV. It's this called Disciples Study Bible. So in case you want to see the front of it, I can get it out of my Bible holder. So this is it's a little it's a little rugged, y'all. But I can't remember if I purchased this Bible here in Colorado or if I got it before we left Tennessee, because seems like I had it before we left Tennessee. I don't remember. I remember going to a store there, a Bible store there, because I remember purchasing my youngest grandson purchased him a Bible, a child's Bible from there. I remember, and I got his name put on it. But it seemed like I purchased it there. But I also went to a bookstore here when we moved here. And I remember, I don't know, I can't remember, but it was either there or here. But I want to say it was in Tennessee. But anyway, I purchased this Bible too. But it's really, as you can see, it's really large print. I shared this on a previous video. I purchased from what's the bookstore, Barnes and Noble. But y'all, to be honest, this is King James Version, and that one is the NIV. But I guess I really need a Bible case holder. I think that's what you call it, because I find myself every now and then I'll go to this Bible, but I really, I've gotten so used to my NIV version. But either way, I'm getting the word. But that Bible is really big. I don't know if y'all can see, but it's sort of long, it's kind of long or whatever. But I sort of felt like the Lord was wanting me to go back to the King James Version, and that's what even prompted me to purchase that. But I'm gonna get me a Bible a holder. A Bible holder, a Bible case. I'm gonna get me that one that fits that Bible, because that Bible is sort of big and long. But anyway, I wanted to hop on here. I'm trying not to be on here too long, but this is something near and dear to my heart, y'all, and I just gotta talk about it. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad or anything like that if you are finding yourself in this situation, or if you ever been in this situation. But I want to talk about I had actually, like I said, it's been in my spirit for a while, and it bothers my soul that people take advantage of people just because they can. And we all down here, we just striving, we're trying to do the best we can, y'all. That's just the truth. But I want to title this video, "Whose Child is This? It's Not Fair." And so basically, I watch YouTube videos. And I don't really have to watch videos about that. It's been present in my life for a while. So like I said, I like to be honest on this channel. I don't have nothing to hide. I don't come on here trying to fake and pretend and make you think I'm something I'm not. No, I'm telling the truth. You know, I'm in my honest season right now, and I'm tired. You know, I seem like I spent all of my life just about up until now. When we moved here, before we moved here, just trying to tip around, you know, and not talk about stuff. We got to start talking about stuff, because that's the only way that we can loose those chains that are on our, not only they're on us, but they're on our children, our children's children. They're on our entire family. We got to tell the truth. We just got to, yeah, it's the hard truth, and it ain't pretty, but it's gonna bring some light to that situation, you know. And, you know, I don't know what it is. I've lived in been around darkness for a long time, growing up, and, you know, there'd be a little light, you know, in the room, somebody talking about the Lord, but not really. You know, they was talking about Jesus, but they wasn't living for him. But again, I want to go back, try to stay on topic. So I want to talk about, you know, having children and having your grandmom or your mom or whatever the case may be, having them to take care of the child. You know, I think that's just so unfair. And I'm gonna share with you why I think it's unfair. And you can say, well, that's none of your business. You know, if they want to do that, or that's, you know, they help me. Yes, that's all given. That's fine and good. But you have to ask yourself, did they lay down and help bring that child in the world, or did you do it? You know, and, you know, I know life changes, you know, things happen throughout our life, and, you know, we sort of, you know, you kind of, you know, sometimes you have to get help. You have to have help, someone to help you. You know, I get all of that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about willfully letting go of your responsibility. You know, you have nothing that's holding you back from not doing what you're supposed to do as a parent, but you're taking advantage of someone else. You're you're abusing them. That's a form of abuse. You know, you have them doing, and it's mental. It can be mental and physical. You say, well, I'm not putting my hand on them, but it's physical, because you have them doing stuff that they shouldn't even be doing, you know. But I'm going somewhere with this. So when, of course, I have 4 children. They're all grown now, two daughters, 2 sons. And so as they were growing up, my mom back in Tennessee, you know, she used to, now at one time, of course, they weren't all here together, but, you know, as they were being born and everything, so my youngest son and my oldest daughter, because my oldest son, if you all been watching the channel, he's my bonus child. So really, you know, me and my late husband, we only had the younger three together. But I treat my oldest son, you know, he's still my son. I still call him my son. But anyway, even though I didn't birth him, but he's still my son. But I'm just sharing it with you so you can understand what I'm saying. So the younger 3, so when my youngest son was born, you know, it was just him for a while. And then my oldest daughter, of course, she was born. So he was born in 2000. She was born in 2003. So a 3-year gap there. But so when she came, well, when it was just him, you know, my mom was like, you can bring him over. She's talking about my son, youngest son. You can bring him over. You know, I don't mind watching him. So, you know, I was like, okay, you know, because, you know, grandparents, they love doing that. You know, that's an enjoyment for them, you know, but not to be taken, they don't want to be taken advantage of. So, you know, me and my late husband, we would have things to do every now and then, because we were homebodies. So usually whatever we had to do, he was with us, you know, the youngest son. And so, you know, I was like, Mom, you know, we good, you know. And then my late husband's parents, they didn't really offer, but because, you know, they had other grandchildren, of course, because he had other siblings, and, you know, so but with my parent, with my mom and stepfather, you know, I was at that time, I was the only one that had a grandchild. They had a grandchild I was the only one that had a child, basically. Because my brother would come next, but his daughter had not yet been born. So she wasn't born until same year my youngest daughter was 2006. So anyway, my mom would be just about begging me sometime, y'all. You know, we go to church, get out of church, bring them children over here or bring that child over here. And I'm like, yeah. But at that time, I was a new mom. So, I wanted to keep my child with me. I was excited, But then, of course, as the other one started coming, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to take her up on her offer, just being honest. And so, but she, she couldn't understand. She was like, you can bring them over here. I'll watch them, But it was always on her terms, She would not have something to do on a certain day or weekend, or she was off, or maybe she want to take them somewhere and show them off to her coworkers or something. It was always on her terms, which was okay, because she could do that. They weren't they were her grandchildren. So anyway, like I said, I never really took her up on her offer, because we always kept our children with us. Everywhere we went, we didn't go that many places, to be honest. Sort of boring, I guess, to some people, but we read at home, we read at church, on vacation together, but there was really no need. It was not a need for us to utilize, my mom's, that, for us to take them over there, unless we just was tired and just, they was getting on our nerves, which it never happened. We just tell them go up to the room or whatever, in the house. But, so like I said, as, time went on, the kids got older, whatever. And, that became just nothing. It was no more needed, because they were big enough to watch themselves or whatever. But I remember my mom saying, or I would be at work and different people, we'd be talking about different stuff. And I would be like, yeah, no, I would let it be known. I said, I think it's just so unfair that, your parents, they raised their children, and then they turn around and got to raise their grandchildren too. And then in some cases, their great-grandchildren. I think that's so unfair. Now, I'm not saying, I know they don't mind doing it. They don't mind helping. They don't mind buying stuff. But this is just my opinion. It's here's the platform God has me on. And so this is my opinion, but put down in the comments what you think, because, I feel like I'm not by myself on that opinion. But, again, I would tell people I work with and stuff, and they say, you don't ever, because this when the kids were little, I said, I don't bother my mama. I said, every now and then I may take them over there, if we got something, when my youngest son was super young, now we had to utilize her a little bit, and that probably was the most we ever used her doing that. Was when I was working a little bit after we had first got married, and new to marriage, new to children, baby, whatever. And so my late husband was working maybe 2 jobs. I was, so we really needed, and it was because we had to work. It wasn't for play. It wasn't trying to get out of being a mom or him trying to get out of being a dad. We really needed that assistance, and it would just be for a few hours or whatever, and they enjoyed it, take his little bag over there and, go pick him up after work, but it wasn't we taking him over there so we can get out of a responsibility. That's what this video is about. We have to be responsible. When you have that baby, or, whether you're a woman, you're man, whoever's listening to this video, please be mindful of other people, your mom, your dad, your uncle, your aunt, whoever it is that you get a help from, assistance from, grandmama, whoever it is, next door neighbor. I can remember my friend, me and her grew, we sort of grew up together. Well, I guess we was sort of like best friends, but she had, after we graduated, before we graduated, she found out she was pregnant. And so after we graduated, of course, the baby was getting bigger or whatever. And so she would take her, for me and her to go out and have fun, because I didn't have kids. Until I met my late husband. But she, for her to go out and me and her to have fun and, go out on the weekend to the movies or whatever, she would ask this this lady was old, y'all. And I'm not saying in a bad way, but she was older. She was like, probably maybe in her, at the time, because we were in our 20s. So I know she was every bit of in her 60s or 70s. She was an older lady, and, walked real slow or whatever, but she didn't mind. She said she didn't mind. I think my friend, she gave her some money to watch her little girl. But, you know, now that I think back on that, that was abusing that lady. That was misusing her, taking advantage of her. You know, like I said, I believe she gave her some money for watching her daughter. But she was dropping her daughter off, you know, over there at the woman's house, so she could, you know, me and her could go have fun. And I wasn't really doing anything, but I probably should have told her not to do that. But, you know, at the time I was like, well, that's her child, you know, she do whatever she need to do. You know, I ain't got no, you know, I didn't have no kids. But then I think back on that, you know, that was you know, that was sort of neglect. It was a lot of stuff tied into that. You know, that was just not, you know, doing what she needed to do as a parent, as a mom. You know, you had that baby, that little girl, and so you drop trying to go around and find somebody to watch your child, you know. So you, not so you can go to work, not so you can do anything constructive, but so you can go have fun. You know, that's unfair. That was unfair to that lady. Yeah, she was paying her money to watch it, but that wasn't her responsibility. And like I said, now that I think back on that, you know, I participated in that. You know, of course I did. I seemed like I was a part of a lot of stuff that was not so good. But I've asked the Lord to forgive me and you know, and repented of those things. But, you know, now, like I said, in hindsight, I think back on a lot of stuff and I'm like, that was wrong. You know, that was just real wrong, you know, of us to be doing that. And like I said, I was just as guilty as she was, because I'll be sitting out in the car and she'd be like, let me go over here. And I think it may have been a few times where the lady wasn't there and we had to wait on her or something. I can't remember, but it's been so long ago. But I'm like, you know, wait a minute. You know, that wasn't right. That was not right at all. But so as it was, you know, she did it. And so we could go have fun. You know, she needed a babysitter. And we'd be dropping that little girl off, her little girl off. And it wasn't no early. You know, y'all know, when you're going on the weekend to have fun, you going to be gone for some hours. On into 10, 11, 12, midnight, whatever. And so that was one situation that I can recall really well. And then the other one where, and I'm sharing different instances where, you know, children are being dropped off and children are being, you know, handed off to somebody else other than who they should be handed off to. You know, you're looking for somebody else to take care of your responsibility. And so the other one is my brother. So, and I you know, I shared this multiple times with my mom, and I let her know. I said, you know, Mama, it ain't right. You know, it ain't right that, you know, he is, he helped bring that, he had a daughter too. He helped bring her in this world, and y'all got to watch her. You know, that's not fair to y'all. And I said, I never misused you watching my children. I could have, but I never did. And she said, yeah, you know, I know. I'm just, you know, he needs some help, and I don't mind helping. I said, I know you don't mind helping. I said, but that's not your responsibility. I said, you've raised your children. I said, now it's time for you to live. Now it's time for you to thrive. You know, whatever God has for you to do. You know, that's not fair. You got to stop, you know, doing what you need to do, because you got to watch your child. You know, you got to watch your baby. That's not fair. It's not fair, y'all. It's not fair. And like I said, we can constantly make excuses on top of excuses on top of excuses. We will make stuff be right because of what we want it to be. But it's not right. It's not right. And, you know, you taking advantage of somebody, you know, sometimes people don't feel good. And, you know, a lot of times, like with that lady, my best friend growing up, she, I feel like that woman probably, I'm pretty sure she wanted to tell her no. I know she did. But she was thinking about that little baby. She was thinking about that little girl. You know, well, you know, sometimes people feel like they have to do stuff, you know, and they should not have to feel like that. You should not even make them feel like that, you know. And it should be a time where you say, you know what, I'm good. You know, I'm not going to even bother her. Or, you know, you don't have to watch her no more. You know, it should be some, but instead, you know, we taking more and more and more advantage of the situation. And then when a person gets sick, you know, this older person gets sick, or they no longer can do what they need to do for us. We can no longer use them. Then what you gonna do? Well, then you're forced to do what you should have been doing all along, which is taking care of your own child or your children. Like I said, that's just so unfair. And then, a lot of the older people, they'll say, well, this is the way I can, I don't mind doing it. No, a lot of times they'll say, I'm not doing anything, because a lot of them are retired. Well, I'm not doing anything. Well, you can't do anything because you're watching the child, and then some of these babies, you got to put the car seat in the car. It's just a lot of stuff, moving parts there. But like I said, nothing is ever said about it. It's always, well, they helping me out, or the person who they asking to help, I'm helping them out. That's always the go-to line. There's nothing wrong with helping. We all need help from time to time. But what I'm talking about is being taken advantage of. We got to learn to say no. We got to learn to say, enough is enough, and it's okay to say no. You don't have to say yes all the time. And watch, y'all, watch when you say no. If you always saying yes to keeping a child or a grandchild, whatever the case may be, say no one time and watch how everything gonna get shifted around. Hopefully what's gonna happen, you don't have to do that anymore. Hopefully you will never be taken advantage of again. That's because, see, it's one or two things that's going to happen. The person is going to be upset, and they're going to be like, well, you know what? I take care of my own child. Well, that's the whole point of it all. Take care of your own child. You laid down, and you got moms. You laid down and helped bring that child in this world. Take care of it. Take care of that little boy, that little sweet little baby, or that baby boy, baby girl. Take care of them. It's your responsibility. That's not fair. That's not fair to whoever you run into all the time, having them weighing them down. And you say, well, they they don't mind. How you know they don't mind? How do you know that? Because you so quick dropping them off over at the child or the children over at their house. Some of y'all probably don't even give them time to say no. It's just given. They gonna do this. This is what they gonna do. It's not fair. It's not fair. But going back to my brother, I expressed over and over and over, till I was just tired of expressing, And me and my late husband used to talk about it all the time, and he said he sure didn't agree with it. He said he just shake his head. But I would always voice my opinion, and I said, I don't know why, it's like how it is. And he said, that's not right. He said, he's a man. He should be spending time with his own daughter. And I said, yeah, I agree, And so it soured his stomach. And anytime he saw a man, young or older man, not taking care of their responsibility, because he sure took care of his. He took care of his children and his wife and his entire family. And so that would just bother him. But, when you're not living in somebody's house, when, you're on the outside and you give your little 2 cents or whatever, give your opinion, that's all, as far as it'll go. But like I said, I would always express to them how I felt. And I start to notice that, when I would really be strong about whatever I was saying, a lot of times my brother wouldn't be at the house. It was like nobody wanted to confront what was going on. Okay, we don't want her to bring that up. He either not be there a lot of times, or my stepfather and my mom, it just be kind of like everybody was sort of tipping around me because they didn't want me to bring that up. It was obvious, but they didn't want me to bring that up. But I don't know what it is, y'all, about the truth. I don't know what it is about living a lie, or living a continuous vicious cycle. Somebody got to stand up, and somebody got to be able to say, this ain't right, y'all. But again, nobody wants to do that. A lot of people don't want to do that, because if you say that's not right, then you got to say some more stuff ain't right. And that door just keep on opening to everything that ain't right in their house, And that's what I felt like, And so I would bag back, because I'd be like, this ain't my house. I don't pay no bills over here. I just come and visit, eat every now and then over here. It's my mom's house, but, You know, I didn't have a say in it. You know, I expressed my opinion, and she would always say the same thing. Well, somebody got to take care of the child. I said, yeah, that's true. Somebody got to take care of her, but it shouldn't, that's not your full responsibility. You know, you should only be taking care of her every now and then, or helping with her. You shouldn't be tied down to her where she got to stay with you while they go and try to get more babies, bring more babies in the world. That's just not fair. It's not, y'all. And some of y'all may not like this video, but I gotta, like I said, we gotta quit living like we living, and we repeating the same stuff year over year in, year out. You know, it just keeps going on. It's a generational curse. You know, nobody wants to talk about, you know, stuff like that. Oh, it's all right. I don't mind doing it. You know, you should mind doing it. That's not your child. That's your grandchild. That's your great-grandchild. That's your neighbor, you know, child. You know, why are you having to, and a lot, like I said, if a lot of the people who you are asking to watch your children or your child, if they were to really be honest and just bold with you, you'll probably be like, what? Why you didn't tell me this sooner? Because I've had that, actually, not with the children situation, but I've actually had someone say to me, and I'm like, well, I've been asking you all along, you know. But what I'm talking about is the truth, you know. Ask them, say, do you have a problem with me, you know, watching my child, or and say, be honest, you know. And a lot of times, you know, they still may deny it, but then later on, you know, because a lot of times you think that they're being totally honest with you, but they talking about you to somebody else. I wish they find somebody else to watch this child. I don't mind doing it, but, you know, I got other stuff to do, you know. But like I said, a lot of times I know what it is. It ain't a lot. It's all the time. They think about that child, you know, because they like, well, this child needs to be taken care of. And they got it, you know, they have a good heart, you know, good intentions. But like I said, there is a line that needs to be drawn. Whereas nobody who's already raised their children, child, whatever the case is, they should not have to redo that. It's not fair to them. They got a life to live too. You know, they want to go out and have fun. You know, they want to do stuff that people their age do. But, you know, they got to wait on you to bring your child over, you know, or I got to change my plans because my grandchild coming over, you know. While you be fancy free, they got to be tied down with your responsibility. And like I said, I could have easily taken advantage of my mom, but I never did. I never did, y'all. And, you know, like I said, the main reason, I was like, I don't want my children raised up under that same stuff I was raised up under. I'm just going to be honest. I'm telling the truth over here. I remember how hard a time I had being raised up on a bunch of foolishness. I'm like, I keep my own children. And then, two, it was no need for us, me and my late husband, to take them over there. Because they were with us everywhere we were going. So, you know, you say, well, I need a break. You know, we got to think about all this stuff before we lay down and get children. Before we lay down and decide to have babies. You know, we think about that, you know. Okay, maybe I want to go on some trips. Maybe I want to do this. Maybe I want to do that. So maybe I should wait on having children until I do everything I need to do. Then, you know, I'll make time to start a family. And, you know, you should be wanting to start a family after you get married. You know, that's how it should be. But I know it's not always the case. But, you know, that's how it should be biblically. But again, you know, and I'm trying to think of, those were the main two situations that I could think of. But like I said, I would always, and that's very strong in my family, you know, where the moms and the grandmoms and the great grandmoms, they're tied down with babies, you know. And when the church that we were at in Tennessee, you know, that was this, quite a few grandmas. They had these teenage adult girls, their grand girls that they were raising, and, you know, and like I said, the other part of that is that they've gotten up in age. A lot of these women are 60, 70 years old, and it's not all women. It's men, grandpas too. You know, I used to tell my dad all the time, I said, Daddy, you need to be enjoying your life. You know, you shouldn't be running around picking up no teenager or having to, and that's something that their parents should be doing. He said, yeah, you know, I don't mind doing them, you know, same old explanation. I don't mind doing it, I ain't doing nothing else. And I'm like, okay. So, you know, how can you be helped if you don't want to be helped? You know, I know a lot of these situations, they enjoy doing it because they don't have anything else to do. But my point of this video is not fair. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to that child. It's not fair to that child. You know, that child sees everything that you're doing. And what it looks like to that child, you don't want to be bothered with that child. That child is like, why are you bringing me over here? Why am I living over here? Why I can't live with you? Why I can't go where you going? You know. And then what I've been around most of my life seeing to see what goes on. The children, they want the children when they want to be seen with their children. You know, when it's some type of event or something. You know, then they want to have the children with them. Then, you know, oh, this my child. Oh, this my daughter. This my son. This my daughter. These my twins. You know, whatever the case is, because they want to parade around. But when they want to have fun and when they want to do what they want to do, that child can't be there. But like I said, y'all, let's just be mindful of everybody. You know, be respectful. You know, that grandma, granddaddy, grandpa, whatever the case is, Meemaw, Nana, Papa, whatever the case is, be mindful of them, okay? Be respectful of them. You say you love them, respect them. It all goes hand in hand. Don't be having them tied down with your responsibility. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to that child, to them children. And like I said, children pay attention to everything. They pay attention to everything. And I grew up under that somewhat. You know, I was being handed off. My mom, yes, she was a single mom. She had to work. It was just me and her for a while. But, you know, as I look back on pictures and photo albums, I was over a bunch of people's house that I shouldn't have been. That's why I'm fighting so hard to this day. All that evil stuff that I was under and around. Words that were spoken over my life. That's what I'm fighting to this day. And I'm winning too. I got the victory. I already got the victory because Jesus gave it to me. But what I'm saying is that we don't realize, you know, we're looking for a quick fix. Let me take my child or my children over such and so house. You don't even know what they doing over that house. You don't know what that child's being reared under. You don't care because you just trying to find somebody to watch your child. And like I said, I'm not talking about if you got to work. I understand that. But I'm talking about taking advantage of people. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about if you got to go work. I'm not talking about if it's an emergency or something. I'm talking about taking advantage of your mother, your father, your grandmother, your grandfather, your aunt, uncle, neighbor, whatever the case is, whoever you got watching your child, that is your child. You need to be watching your own child, your own children. They need you in their life, not all these other people. And it's just the grace of God that I turned out the way I did because God had his holy hand on my life. And he's gonna protect your children. But we gotta play we got a part to play in this. You know, we quick to say, you know, that's my child, you know, that's my son, that's my daughter. But it's responsibility that comes along with that. It's more than just saying they're your child. You got a role to play in their life. Quit taking your child, your children, and dropping them off over somebody else's house. Quit having these older women and men take care of your responsibility. They're up in age. You know, some of these older people, women and men, they taking, you know, they on different medications. They don't feel good. You know, they irritable. You know, then they dealing with a little child. Some of the cases, a little baby. You know, that's stress on them, y'all. Be mindful of that. And I'm saying it in the most loving way I can. But I just wanted to hop on here and share that. And I didn't finish about the lady back in Tennessee. So, well, it was quite a few. But she had teenagers she was raising. They were granddaughters, and you know, I talked to her a few times, and she's since passed on now. But she would tell me, she said, you know, I don't mind. She said, I'm here to help, you know, my daughter, and I said, yeah, but I could tell that she wanted to live her life, you know, and like I said, you know, as we all know, as children, young girls and young men, as they become older, they go through these, you know, different stages of puberty, things like that. And these older people, they got to deal with all this stuff, and you know, it's just a lot, y'all. It's just a lot. You know, it's a lot for them. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to them. So please, I pray that you always hear Jesus speaking through me. Don't use nobody. Don't have nobody doing what you should be doing for yourself, okay? Your children need you in your life. They need you, not everybody else in the neighborhood. They need you, okay? It's important to them. You are important to them. You are important to Jesus. We all important to Jesus. So as always, I pray you always hear Jesus speaking through me and not just me. I pray you've had a beautiful, blessed Wednesday in the mighty name of Jesus. I pray that you were a blessing to somebody today. You were already blessed when God woke you up this morning. I love you, but remember, Jesus loves you so much more. The best is still yet to come for you and for me. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. I pray every prayer you've ever prayed to Jesus, that he will answer it according to his holy, perfect, divine will for your life. You are blessed. You are better than blessed. And always thank Jesus for another day that he allows you to see. And just be a blessing. We're blessed to be a blessing. Thank you all for listening, for subscribing. This channel is growing. It's growing. It's growing, y'all. Such a blessing. All glory, honor, praise to Jesus. He sits high and he looks low. Thank you all for listening. And I love you with the love of Christ. And I pray you always hear Jesus speaking through me and not just me. Bye-bye.